Okay, Assistant Superintendent Darren Nielsen.
I don't know if you've been tracking this, but this is action item number 45 on your agenda today. So, and it's an important one, and it's time sensitive. And so I appreciate those of you who've been able to stick with this process. In 2015, the board adopted new science standards for grades 6th, 7th, and 8th, and that began the process that brings us to where we are today on this decision for achievement standards. So after the new standards were adopted, then we go into a process from the assessment side of creating assessment questions to measure those standards. This past year, we field tested those items. The students didn't receive instantaneous scores because we had to go through the process of identifying these achievement thresholds. Performance level descriptors, though, were the next step after the assessment questions were written, and we brought in teams of Utah educators to determine those performance level descriptors. And those are simply teachers sitting down and looking at the standards and saying, here's what proficient looks like for 6th grade science. Here's what above proficiency looks like, and below and approaching. After we have the data from the assessment, we bring educators back in on this panel. There were 33 educators, I believe, on this panel that came from across the state. And they sat down for a 2-day workshop. I think we were able to have a couple of board members come for a short time. I think Jennifer, you came, and Elise was able to come for a little bit at a time. It's pretty grueling work for these educators as they sit down and are broken into groups and independently look at the responses for student samples and put those into these descriptors. What you're seeing on the screen and also in your packet is the recommendations from this panel. I just want to highlight they went through the process that is an industry standard in determining these. So you'll see the proficiency cut scores for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science. If the board accepts these recommendations, these would be the thresholds on the scale score that when we publish science scores later this month, hopefully, and go into the accountability reporting cycle in December, this is the information that will be used to determine the ratings for these proficiencies. So it's our recommendation to the board that these achievement standards be adopted as recommended by the panel.
Okay, questions? Board Member Lisa Cummins.
Yes, I saw that it was in with air and that we're still calling it SAGE. Is that a typo, or is that on purpose, or we still have a SAGE test for this year?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Our contract with AIR runs through the end of October, and then it's done. They were the institution that assisted our educators in writing these items over the last couple of years since the new standards were adopted. And so this is work that they did that the official report you'll see has their letterhead on it. And then we'll transfer these scale score proficiency or achievement thresholds into our new system.
If I may, Chair?
Yeah, follow up.
Okay, so if you recall, I've asked maybe 2 or 3 times now how many questions have come directly from AIR themselves, and what was that percentage? What was the percentage of different states that have contributed to that? Now, I understand that these are quote-unquote seed questions and seeds according to the seed standards. So, but I'd still like to know what percentage of questions are coming from AIR themselves.
Okay.
Also, and it just went.
You want to answer that question first, and I'll give you another follow-up.
Yeah, so that question's broader than just science, but I can answer it for science, I believe off the cuff, and Scott Ross Kelly behind me can confirm or correct me on this, but all of these items are Utah written items. None of those are owned by other states or AIR. None of these are leased items.
Okay. Okay, I did remember the other question. I did remember. No, I didn't. Never mind.
Okay.
It's that time.
I have one. Darren, I remember, or Assistant Superintendent Nielsen, don't want to be too casual here, because it's really important. I can remember having it's kind of a checklist process at one time, seeing it. We start here, then we do this, and we do this, and we do this, and then we end up at the bottom. Does this fit on that checklist of like 7 or 8?
Are you thinking of the standards?
Is that on the standards?
Yeah, I'm
Is
not
this any
su-
part, is there a step? Is that what I'm thinking?
Yeah, so there's a couple of sequences. So standards adoption has a multi-step document, and then also assessment item creation and development has a multi-step process. This process is directly related to our ability to use the assessment scores to provide some kind of
Okay.
proficiencies.
So is there a process on this, a step process, or is it not warrants a step?
Of how to develop these proficiency or achievement
and get to
thresholds.
this recommendation, yeah.
Yeah, so the technical report that's in there talks about, it's not identified as a checklist, but there's a process, an industry standard on how states or educational entities come up with these thresholds, so that it's not just a haphazard mechanism of determining whether we say a student's proficient or not.
I saw that, but I also like that abbreviated, if there was a way to abbreviate that or put that process in some kind of simple list.
Oh, okay.
It helps me, but I was just wondering if it existed. I'm not being critical and saying I have to have one. I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I'm going to check with my section back here.
Okay.
No.
No? All right. Well, it's sometimes like a little timeline check thing, how things evolve and through your meeting, through
Yeah.
these 30, however, what was it, 33 or 36 educators that all, through that process of how you get it to the end. So I was just curious. I'm not critical, though.
Okay.
Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. I've been through this process before as one of the team members who made the standards for
lived.
proficient or not. So I'd like to make a motion, please.
Okay.
Is that okay, Chair? That we accept the performance standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science as established and recommended by the 33-member Standard Setting Committee.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second? Second. Discussion to the motion.
I did remember my question really quickly. Because it's just for the interim, the first part of it, do these questions transfer over to the Questar, and do we have to pay an additional fee to do that? Or are we having to redo this process to come up with more questions for Questar?
Yeah, so we'll, these questions Utah owns, and they'll go into whatever system that we have. And our contract with Questar includes taking these items and putting them into their delivery system for
Okay.
RISE. All of our assessment contracts, so currently with Questar and also with Pearson, include additional item development. And so there'll be ongoing item development to keep your item bank live and fresh. We won't have to go through another standard setting process unless the science standards change, and then we have to change the assessment questions. Then we'd have to go through another science standard. But
Okay, but the transference will be clean.
yeah, when you say clean, one of the challenges is you have different technology platforms, and so when we transfer items, especially these science items, because of the way they're developed, we haven't been able to see what that looks like in our Questar bank yet in the delivery system,
Okay.
but we anticipate they'll be fully usable. It's part of our contract, and if Questar can't deliver that, there would be,
So it'd be on
issues we'd
their
have.
end? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
The motion before the board is that the board accept the performance standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science as established and recommended by the 33-member Standards and Setting Committee. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Thank you. Anyone online or anyone that's on the phone?
Yeah, I'm on the phone. This is Scott.
Did we get your vote? We want to make sure we have it included?
I believe so.
Okay. I thought that was Elisa talking.
Thanks a lot, Mark.
Okay, we've got that.